Is Rahul Gandhi really Bal Buddhi, or is it something more than that? What do you think? Well, let's examine this question in the light of a news item carried by all national newspapers, and I'm going to read out the report that appeared in Times of India. I'll read the report in full, which contains what Rahul Gandhi said and what Sri Amit Malviya, as one of the spokespersons of the BJP, said in response to what Rahul Gandhi, the Bal Buddhi, said. So that we can then, on the basis of the facts before us, reflect on it and try to understand what it signifies. Let me read the report. Congress leader Rahul Gandhi Friday urged people to refrain from targeting BJP member and former Union Minister Smriti Irani, who lost to Kishori Lal Sharma in Amethi in the Lok Sabha elections. The advice followed digs at Irani on social media after she vacated her official bungalow recently. Winning, these are the words of Rahul Gandhi, winning and losing happen in life. I urge everyone to refrain from using derogatory language and being nasty towards Smriti Irani or any other leader for that matter. Humiliating and insulting people is a sign of weakness, not of strength. So this is what Rahul Gandhi said. And let's pause for a moment and ask ourselves if this is a kind of statement that emerges from Bal Buddhi or infantile intelligence, immature mind, or does it really bespeak something more mature, something that we consider noble, something that most people will find a little beyond their easy ways of managing? So, when such a stand is taken in public life, what do we feel about it as citizens? Should that matter? Shouldn't that matter? Or should we go by what others say about it? Now, this is an important issue because we are living in an age of public opinion. The problem with the age of public opinion is that it prevents you from thinking. Something happens and immediately there is a reaction, and the people who react to what happens or what happened do so from their perspective, from their angular vision, and in terms of their own vested interests. And therefore, your freedom to think is taken away from you. You are exposed to whatever they say because they have the means of public communication at their disposal, which you don't have. And you're constantly exposed to this barrage of public opinions buffeting you. And therefore, you eventually become like flotsam. Flotsam is a dead wood floating on the surface of water, and that piece of wood is carried by the stream wherever it wants. So even though you have the capacity to think for yourself, you never do so, and you simply become the dumping ground of the opinions of others. So in this instance, just imagine yourself, you are Rahul Gandhi. In the 2019 elections, a very charismatic BJP leader, lady leader, called Smriti Irani, defeated you. It's not an easy thing to take an electoral defeat from your own pocket borough. It's not easy at all. And then this time around, she has lost to a person who was your man Friday, so to speak. So, how would you actually view the plight of your former foe who is now vanquished by your sidekick? This is the issue. So now let us see how the BJP spokesperson Amit Malviya, with whom I had the opportunity once to participate in a television talk, and I have vivid memories of it, though I will not include the details of that conversation here. So this is what Amit Malviya says. This is the most disingenuous message. After unleashing Congress leaders like a pack of wolves on the woman who defeated him in Amethi and smashed his arrogance to smithereens, this is rich. All this gibberish doesn't take away from the fact that Srimati Smriti Irani forced Balak Buddhi to abandon Amethi. So, according to Malviya, Amit Malviya, Rahul Gandhi is only Balak Buddhi, and to the extent that the statement is made by an officially accredited spokesperson of the BJP, whose supreme leader, Sri Narendra Modi, stuck this label by implication, not directly, but by implication in a context in a speech in the parliament. Therefore, it is natural that the spokespersons of his party would feel obliged to repeat the same and never look beyond it. That is his compulsion, but we are under no such compulsion. We are ordinary citizens and we have a certain degree of freedom guaranteed to us by the Constitution, which it will be a pity if we don't use. Now, here I want to make a very important point, and that is our society today is polarized into two opposite camps. And this polarization has abolished the space for the middle ground. What if I don't want to belong to the Congress camp or the India camp? What if I don't want to belong to the NDA camp or the BJP camp? By virtue of having lived, say, 75 years, by virtue of having had a lot of experience, also read a lot, reflected a lot, I'm in a position to come to my own understanding of whatever happens. I don't need to be told as to this is exactly what it is and you should think of it only in these terms. And I consider that to be an insult to my intelligence. And at any rate, as a teacher, I believe that it is the duty of every citizen to think for himself and herself. Because if we surrender our thinking capacity at the doorstep of someone or some party or some institution or some group or the other, we become their slaves. We gained our freedom in a very, very painful and precious way. And unless and until we value that freedom, and the only indication that we value that freedom is that we use it in a very responsible and creative manner. So, unless and until we use the freedom to think and the freedom to articulate as guaranteed in the Constitution of India as fundamental rights, even though we are living in a free country, we may not be living in a state of freedom. The second point I want to make is that every one of us has a responsibility to ensure that the society in which we live is as healthy as it can be. As a teacher, I always endeavor to make my students conscious of their responsibilities towards the society. Because from experience, I have learned that everybody wants to live in a good society, but nobody wants to do anything about it. How can you have a good society to live in if you don't care to build a good society and do what little you can in order that a good society may come into being and survives or continues? So, we all have to hold ourselves in a state of responsibility in regard to the health and wholeness of the society to which we belong. So, that's also the reason why I share with you my reflections on some of the contemporary events. I repeat it again and again, even though I deal with political subjects or subjects of political taste or flavor. My interest is not political. My interest is educational, philosophical, societal, cultural. I feel like spiritual. My interest is not political at all. Though I know that people who feel inconvenienced by my free thinking would try to stick some legal label or other on me, because that's the only thing they can do. If they can't counter me on the basis of rational and reasoned arguments, all they can do is to discredit me. So, I won't be surprised if this another volley of vilification is directed at me. Now, what I want to say is this, and maybe I should put it through a couple of instances so that my meaning becomes clear. One of the uh, personages or characters or persons, great persons from history, who has always fascinated me is Socrates of Athens. Now, there's a great deal to be said about his life, and if you want to know uh, uh, the details about Socrates' life, by the way, Socrates has not written a single line, he has not written a book. Whatever we know about Socrates is mainly from two sources. One is Plato. Socrates figures in Platonic dialogues, and also from another Greek philosopher called Xenophon. Xenophon. And Xenophon has a collection of Socrates' ideas and insights. Um, okay, now one of the most gripping events in the life of Socrates was that he was condemned by the Council of Athens to death. And in those days, those who are thus condemned would be kept in a cell, and at the appointed time, the jailer or the cell keeper would come and force that person to drink a poison called hemlock. Hemlock. Now, the good thing about hemlock, I'm told, I have not had hemlock so far, but what little I've read about it, it's a form of anesthetic. It's an anesthetic plus killer, and it sort of causes your peripheral circulation to stop, and gradually the rest blood circulation through the rest of the body also stops, and then you die. Now, the day prior to the execution of Socrates was accused of corrupting the youth of Athens, as well as promoting disaffection to the gods of Athens. These were the two main charges against him. Utterly false and frivolous, totally baseless. Uh, he had enemies for a reason I need not state here. And his enemies happened to be members of the Athenian council at that time, and so they managed to get a hostile verdict against Socrates. Now, the day prior to his execution, one of his ardent disciples, his name is Crito, 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 bribed the jailer, entered the cell of Socrates, and offered to save him from there so that he would not have to die this unjust death. He had made all arrangements to smuggle Socrates to another city so that he could continue to live there in peace. And Plato's work, Crito, is an elaborate portrayal or record of what Plato thinks was the conversation that happened between Socrates and Crito. Now, Plato was not present on the occasion. This is what he imagines. It's very fascinating to read that book. Now, when Crito suggests to Socrates that he cooperate with him and get out of the jail and save his life, Socrates says, "Look, I will not do anything that brings discredit to my city state. I owe my life to my state. My state has made me who I am. And even if the whole of Athens tells me that this verdict is unjust, it is still issued by the official body of the city. And therefore, I shall surrender myself, submit myself gladly and readily to it." And the idea of going against the will of the state, running away from the punishment that has been pronounced on me, is something that I cannot even think of. Now, go to the next day, the day of the execution. The jailer comes with hemlock, Normally, you can imagine the victim will be reluctant to drink it. He will try to resist as much as he can. But in this case, what happened was Socrates takes the bowl of hemlock from the jailer. He says, I don't want my blood to come upon the state. You are acting on behalf of the state. I will take that upon myself. And he drinks hemlock himself so that the jailer is not put to any conscience problems. That's the greatness of the man. This capacity to think for others, this capacity to respect the greatness of your city, this capacity to rise above all personal considerations and to affirm something of eternal value, that is the sign of greatness. Now, let me give you another story from the life of Lord Buddha. This is not exactly from the Buddha as he lived 600 years before Jesus. According to the Buddhists, there is a whole tradition of Buddhas. So it's one of the Buddhas. Now, when he was walking in the garden, he saw an eagle catch a pigeon. And the eagle was about to fly away with its game. That's the bird it has it has caught. So Buddha stops. He says, wait, give me a moment. So the eagle stops. He says, look, what you want is a meal, right? The eagle says, yes, that's what it is. He says, okay, you let the pigeon go. You take the equivalent of the pigeon's flesh from my hand. That should be all right. It's a good bargain, right? The eagle is happy, fine. So at that time, almost by supernatural action, a pair of scales falls from heaven and the process begins. So the pigeon is kept on one scale, and Buddha himself cuts a slice of his meat, which he thought was large enough to be equal to the weight of the pigeon, puts it on the other scale. But the scale of the pigeon remains low and the other above. So he goes on cutting one piece after another. He goes on cutting his flesh, raw flesh. And the story goes that ultimately only a little piece of flesh was left on his body. Till then, there was no change, no movement on the scales. When he cut the last slice and put it on the scales became even. The eagle flew away. The life of the pigeon was spared. And Buddha, of course, gave his life. Now, why do I cite this? So these are the sensitivities that the Indian culture held very dear to its conscience a long time ago. This is the secret of India's greatness. If today we can think of India having been a world guru, it was because of qualities like this. Today we want to be world guru without any of these qualities, and I find that absolutely absurd. Look at the crudity that has come into our national culture and our consciousness. Look at the humanity that we have lost. Look at the vulgarity that's being showcased. Look at the brutality that is shown as some kind of a personal merit. We are losing our foundations. The very beauty of life will be lost. We may achieve something, but all that we achieve in the world will not be equal to what we have lost in the process. That's called a Pyrrhic victory. A Pyrrhic victory is a victory which is worse than a defeat. So, if this is the quality of public conversations, dialogue, responses, interactions, my dear friends, we have reasons to worry as to where we are headed. India deserves better than this. I have no doubt about it. Even today, you think of Rahul Dravid. I'm not a cricket expert. I lost interest in cricket about 30 years ago. But this particular news item caught my eyes. Rahul Dravid was the chief coach of the Indian World Cup winning team. So they were all given an award of 5 crores. Rahul Dravid said that I will accept only 2.5 crores because that's the amount that you're giving to the technical team. He is the chief coach, so he's certainly above the rest of the technical team. But such is the goodness of the man, such is his nobility. That he says, I don't want the 2.5 crores to distinguish me, separate me from the rest of the team, which worked so closely with me. That is still true about the Indian spirit. I'm sure that Mother Teresa would have died as an ordinary nun if she hadn't come to India. It's the greatness of the soul of India that transformed an ordinary nun to the kind of world emblem of charity and compassion that she became. There is something great about our country. It's a terrible tragedy if we are unable to even recognize it, or if our sense of national pride is attached to something that is exactly its opposite. It's a terrible tragedy. I'm really, truly worried about it. Therefore, without wanting to be partisan, I want to say that Rahul Gandhi's response in drawing the line that his supporters shall not cross in reacting to Srimati Smriti Irani's present situation is more akin to the spirit of India than this contemptuous, dismissive response of Amit Malviya, who sees in this response nothing but Balak Buddhi. It's very unfortunate. No, I'm sure that better sense will prevail. I refuse to give in to despair and hopelessness. We must believe that India will wake up from its present state of decay, degeneration, moral, intellectual, cultural degeneration. And she will wake up and do everything possible to do justice to the great genius that she is. I pray that we would get the kind of political leadership that can understand the essence of India's greatness and do justice to it. It's very easy to be negative, cynical, contemptuous, dismissive, infantile. It takes a great effort to be noble. The ascent to the nobility of the human soul, what I call the aristocracy of the human spirit, is precisely the beauty of life. And once that beauty is gone, life becomes very dull. Let me give you an illustration on that. I'll close. When I was a little boy, I grew up in Kallimala, which is village kind of setting, as you know. In those days, you could see glowworms in the night. Minna minanga, glowworms. It was so beautiful. I used to be fascinated by these glowworms. They are so serene, they are so nice, they are so natural, as against the electric lights that you see all around you. And I used to sit and wonder what kind of a beautiful creature this would be. So one day, after having seen so many of these glowworms in the night, and in those days there used to be so many of them. I mean, hundreds, sometimes thousands of them, you know. So such a beautiful sight to see. I thought I would go and get one of them. Early in the morning I went, where they were actually concentrated. And to my surprise, I found absolutely drab little creatures crawling their way. The glowworm minus the glow is only a worm. The glowworm minus its glow is only a worm. India is a glowworm, not a worm. The India of our dreams is a glowworm. Let's not make it a worm. Jai Hind. Sabko Sanmati de Bhagavan.